Just here in my shop with this can of Pepsi I just bought.
Here in my garage, just bought this new Lamborghini here. It's fun to drive up here in the Hollywood Hills.
So we've been in the shop version 2.0 now for a couple years, give or take. And I figure we've got a lot more people subscribed to the channel, so I think it's a good time to do a refresher. And let's do an updated shop tour, shall we? All right. So by now, you should be familiar with these double doors. As you come in, there's that familiar shop space that has undoubtedly changed in every single video that I put out. All right, so coming in through the door, of course, we've got this whole workbench setup here, which has been the miter station since the beginning, but it has definitely gone through a metamorphosis and evolution as time has gone by, and I've learned that I just wanted things to be different, or I wanted it to look different. So let's just go through a few of the major changes. I would say the biggest, most obvious change is the fact that the miter saw is sitting flush with the surface. Of course, since moving in here, we have added this Makita 36 volt 10-inch miter saw. I chose this not just because it's Makita. I mean, that did definitely play a large part in it, but it was because of the action of the slide. The vast majority of the miter saws on the market all slide backwards into the wall. And I knew that I wanted to tuck this as far back as possible. In order for me to use another one, I'd have to have the miter saw sticking way, way far out. I mean, it's sticking out pretty far now, maybe about 6 inches, but it would have been a lot more had I gotten a different miter saw. Of course, I've got it hooked up. There's some dust collection that goes down through the bottom. And I got this just El Cheapo wind dust collector down here. It's dedicated to the miter saw. So you've got a 4-inch pipe going up. There's a splitter right here. And then underneath, there's actually a tray underneath. And so it's collecting dust that falls through the bottom. And then it's drawing dust through this back port, as well as there's a chute right here where the blade is raking dust up. So it has 3 points of dust collection for the miter saw. Now, visually, there's a few things that we did. First of all was I stripped all of the really dull gray blue paint. And then I came over that with Total Boat Halcyon, which is like just a great utility varnish, and put several coats over the whole surface. Makes it nice and durable, gives it a nice sheen, also helps to keep the dust easier to clean up. It doesn't stick to the surface like paint, like this flat paint. Also, if you look right in here, you'll see that there's some T-track. Of course, this is Incra's T-track, which I've used on all of my workbenches over the years. And this I use in conjunction with this little stop block, so I can set repeatable links up to a certain point, obviously. I mean, it's, I can only go about this far. What is that? Maybe 15 inches. So the smallest length I can go is 15 inches. I probably need to work out like an extendable stop block at some point, but it's not that important at this moment. So on the back wall, of course, is where all the tools hang. Some of them I use on a regular basis. Some of them are just up here because they just need to be out of the way. All right, now, when I set the miter saw down to the surface level, I had to do some modifications. One of which was there was these 2 drawers here that were just under the benchtop surface. So I had to remove those and I decided I still wanted to use them, so I dropped them down there, set the drawer slides in place, and then I put a shelf, a piece of plywood on top to make a shelf, so there's more storage down there. And then I also added this shelf in here. Now before, there was just nothing there. It was just a huge chasm of space, which sounds great, but really you end up only putting one layer of things on the bottom, and then you end up piling junk on top of it. I'm not saying that this is super well organized, but it is better than what it was before. And we've got a good bit of tools down here. One of which is my router table, which you undoubtedly would have seen a couple of videos about that. I'll put all the links to like reference videos in the description. So what I think we'll do is we'll just continue panning this way. This is officially the world's grossest deep sink. That's probably my fault. Over here we've got some flatboard, like retail space wallboard here with some shelves hung on it, and then that's basically holding a few random bits and bobs, and then some scrap wood up here. Now over here under the window, we've got the workbench that I built last year, and there's a reason why it's here and not beside the table saw. We'll get to that later on. Of course, there's a whole video about building this. This is a solid top that has been wrapped in some that's maple plywood on top. And then I've got, this is cherry on the sides and then mahogany on the end caps. And that's sort of been my de facto building construction style for work surfaces because it's more cost effective. And if I ever had to replace this top, I just chisel out these plugs and take the screws out, pop out the plywood on top, cut a new piece, put it in its place. I did not glue this top down. It's just all screws holding it in place for that very reason. It's replaceable. Of course, I've got more of that Incra T-track in here. That was a booger to route out, I have to tell you. So right now, this is the sanding station. I've got the Festool ETS 150 here, and that's not gonna be permanent. I actually am gonna build a sanding cart that will float around free willy because I don't like to have to bring every single thing I wanna sand over here. I like it as a sanding station, but I don't like being hogtied for every single thing. For instance, that project in the corner, it's not practical to have that on here. So panning over from the workbench, of course we have our trusty trash can, which fills up quickly. But then above that, we've got our primary clamp rack. So of course we've got a couple varieties of parallel clamps, and then bar clamps, some random Bessies, and then I've got my dovetail slot micro jig clamps. And then we have the track for the Makita track saw hanging below that. There's the doorway to Narnia. So around the corner from the doorway to Narnia, we have the Win Benchtop drill press. And I never really thought I would get a whole lot of use out of that, but man, it has really come in the clutch. So it's been good to have that little baby drill press. Now in the corner, we got more of this retail wallboard stuff with some shelves here. This is literally closet-made wire shelving that you can get from Home Depot or Lowe's. And it's got these flat bar shelves that go into the flat board. And then these wire shelves are just zip tied. It does the job. I didn't want solid shelves because I felt like it would really close in the space, make it seem claustrophobic in here. This space is jam full of stuff, and it is organized to some degree. You'll just have to take my word for it. But we have a lot of finishing supplies, tape, rags, glue. This is where my drills go, the chargers for the batteries, paint, sandpaper, yeah, all that good stuff. So I don't remember if I ever talked about this cabinet here. Basically, this used to be a Art Deco style dresser. And this was given to me when someone was moving and they had no use for it anymore. And I didn't have a clue what I was gonna do with it. In fact, it sat in the corner of my den for probably 6 to 8 months, and it was covered with stuff. And my brother-in-law said, "Hey, wouldn't that make a great tool storage?" And I said, "You know what, you're right." Now, originally, this had some like semi-opaque plastic drawer fronts. And I said, well, that doesn't really fit my style. So let's just take those off and make plywood ones, which we did. We cut some plywood drawer fronts. I did some notching on the ends here so that it would slide into the grooves. I just put these utility drawer pulls on here, and it made it look not Art Deco. This is full of stuff, and it is also partially organized. All right, this right here is a project that's in progress, and it's not technically my project. I've been helping a guy step by step build this hope chest. What this is sitting on is something that I've had since the old shop. In fact, the OGs will remember the Rikon bandsaw I had. It used to sit on top of this cart. Anyway, that cart has been around for quite a while, and I think at this point, it's never gonna leave. I may paint the base all black at some point. Right now, it's just partially painted. All right, so we're gonna roll this back so we can get behind it. And back here is our central dust collection area. I added this a month or two after moving into this shop because the old jet dust collector I had in the old shop just was not going to be powerful enough to reach all the way down here, and then ultimately would never be able to do this number over here. So originally it was this single stage setup, and then I built this Frankenstein's monster of a dust collector separator here. So we got the Oneida Dust Deputy XL Big Boy, whatever it's called. And it goes down, it's sitting on this shelf. This is bolted directly to the wall. And then it feeds into this 55-gallon drum here. Fun fact, this used to transport vast quantities of Mountain Dew. And in fact, when I bought it off of Facebook Marketplace, it still smelled like Mountain Dew. Also, over on this wall, we've got our pipe clamps here. Couple varieties of thicknesses. Some of those were from my brother-in-law, some of those were mine. Also, we've got a drywall square, which I think I've used maybe once for one thing. Moving around the corner, we've got the Jet 14-inch bandsaw. I've thought several times about upgrading to a newer, nicer, better bandsaw, but in the end, this thing really hasn't let me down. And all I've had to do is replace the blade. I've done a few things. I bought this adapter here so I could use a common size hose on it. Yeah, I put the Craig bandsaw fence on it, and you know, I can't really complain about it. It does what it's supposed to do. Yeah, it's old and a little rickety, but still a good saw. So this was in the old shop, obviously. And then also its matching brother, the Jet 6-inch joiner. And of course, that was the first major tool I ever put in the shop. before I even had a proper table saw, I had this joiner. This thing, of course, is plumbed into the dust collection, and also at some point after moving here, I did upgrade from the straight knife to the helical head cutter. It's the Elephas 6-inch helical head, which fits a variety of brands, not just Jet, but also Delta and Rigid. I think they're all basically manufactured in the same place. So they all can take basically the same cutter head. Anyway, that was a great upgrade, and it wasn't that difficult to change. So of course, in the old shop, I had the DeWalt DW735X planer, which is the most popular, I suppose you could say, planer on the market for enthusiasts. And I used that for several years. I don't remember how long I had it, maybe 4 years, something like that. I have no idea. And eventually I got to thinking about how much I wanted to have that helical head cutter, the Shelix, for it. And then I started looking at the prices, and at the time, the prices for the helical head cutter were approaching $500. Now, I understand that that price has fluctuated considerably, and it's probably low now. And probably some people are like, well, you were stupid for buying this and not just upgrading your DeWalt. Well, maybe, but I bought this with the helical head in there, ready to go, and minimal setup. So I did what I did, and that's all there is to it. Now, with that being said, I will admit, and not begrudgingly, because I was not given this by Grizzly, I will say that it was incredibly frustrating to get these in-feed and out-feed trays leveled. If I was given the option, I probably would not buy it again for this very reason. This, of course, is one of the OG workbenches. I had this in the original shop as my out-feed table with my rigid table saw. In fact, I built this to fit right up against the rigid table saw and cut my slot accordingly for the miter slot. Also, this pony vise here was put on basically right when I built it, so it's been here since basically the beginning. However, we're no longer butted up against a rigid table saw. I am, of course, talking about the newest, baddest tool in the shop, which is the Grizzly G1023RLWX. That's a lot. This is Grizzly's 5 horsepower table saw with the extension wing on the right side for the router table. If you want to get more information on that, there is a video in the description, as well as maybe a card right here. This thing is amazing. 5 horsepower motor, the blade kicks up instantaneously. There's like no build up time at all. Like it just kicks up to full speed and just chews through anything I push through that blade. This being a 5 horsepower motor, it does take an incredible amount of power, much more than your classic contractor style. So leading into it, of course, is this big old 10 gauge cord here that goes under this track and goes all the way back here to the wall. Down here in the corner, and that's where we've got our 220 outlet that thanks to my dad and my brother-in-law, got that installed one day while I was at work. So thanks, Dad, appreciate it. So just a few loose ends. We've got the little tiny California Tools air compressor down there when it's needed. Under here, we've got my Benchtop belt sander, which I use quite a bit. And I think that's really all of the little stuff. Of course, I've got scrap wood everywhere. And not just in here, but also in here. In fact, this is the main lumber storage for the workshop. Also back here, we've got this bowl of black oak slabs, as well as the silver maple from my backyard. So, that has been your update on the state of affairs here in the shop. And hopefully you found it somewhat informative, maybe entertaining, or maybe somewhat educational. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video. And thank you for subscribing for these last couple, however many years this has been. I honestly can't keep track. It's been fun, and hopefully I can continue doing this for many, many more years. Let's find out. All right, see you on the next one. Bye.